Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron. I'm joined by my co-host today, Cindy Vole. And say hi, Cindy. Yeah, you got to say hi, otherwise I don't see you. It's still my face on there.
Okay. Hi.
Yeah, there you go.
Hello.
And and
Welcome.
and Cindy has set up a whole series of interviews. We did Anthony Shin the other day, who does wonderful, unbelievable productions of near-death experience. I've always said near-death experience is extremely important. We do the UFO thing, but as most people know, I left sort of the UFO field in 2012 and I've gone into consciousness. And I've seen all the links to different stories with near-death experience. And I've pointed out that figure maybe people don't know is that 40% of all people who claim to be experiencing non-human intelligence will say they've had a near-death experience. And so you have all the people, 37% have had a near-death experience. And so you say, well, is this random that you'd have a near human intelligence contact and you'd also have a near-death experience? And it appears that it may not be random, that this may be sort of things that we plan. So I've looked at all the parallels between the two. You have near-death experience, 31% at one point say they knew the answer to everything in the universe. In the UFO field, the experiencers, it's 40% say at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe and was taken back from them. So you see these parallels and you start to get the idea this is the same thing. These are very important. They're linked together. And so since 2012, I've spent almost all my time working on the field of consciousness and the nature of reality. What's really going on? Where do we come from? Where are we going? And why are we here? And are we doing what we're supposed to do? So Cindy set up these interviews, and I appreciate her work on this. She's a busy beaver who's busy doing this stuff all the time. So I'll turn it over to Cindy because she's the one that made the contact. And our guest today, Anthony, will come on in a minute.
Okay. So I found Peter Anthony on Anthony Shin's near-death experience documentary. I found Peter's story very moving and very informative, and especially his numerology aspect of it, that we'll just call it the divine that has shown him, and also given him psychic abilities in his resume is quite impressive. And I feel that it's really important for me to really share his entire resume bio because it really will help you understand his background, where he came from, and why he is so devoted to what he's doing now. He's written several books. So Peter Anthony is a TV producer, paranormal investigator, a published author of several books, including Keymaster and Miracle Dogs short story, a contributing writer for several magazines across the country, including Johns Hopkins Medical Journal, and highly skilled numerology expert. The early days of Peter's career began when he was setting to become a special effects makeup artist. Anthony received a phone call to make an appearance on Lisa Gibbons' ABC PM magazine show when a scheduled guest canceled at the last minute. That's what I would call synchronicity, meant to be. Peter was unaware that this phone call would launch his career into television. Julie Gauthier, producer of CBS News, tuned in that night. Anthony's segment aired, and the rest, as they would say, it's history. Working alongside news anchor Dan Rather, Diane Sawyer, Leslie Stahl, and Bob Schaefer. Peter was quickly to rise and was soon working in with the who's who in television and film. In 1987, after effects of a near-death experience presented Peter with inexplicable gifts of mathematical codes such as 222, 333, 444, as well as series of 0.00s, followed by a series of 1111. This played a life-changing occurrence in Anthony's life. His artistic talent disappeared and were replaced with Okay, Peter, you're gonna have to
It's
help.
Pythagoras. It's Pythagoras. Yeah,
Okay,
we call them Pythagorean codes.
Pythagorean codes allowing Peter Anthony to become an authority in ancient numerology. And I can attest to that because back in 2023, I had a reading with Peter. It was very profound. I highly recommend viewers to reach out to Peter. I got a lot out of my reading, and it was just really, really special. Hollywood VIPs behind closed doors heard of Peter's gift as an intuitive and began booking private sessions for themselves, their family, friends, and colleagues. In 1995, Peter's near-death experience ability landed him on Fox Hits TV series, Sightings. Peter Anthony traveled extensively throughout the U.S., working alongside a team of paranormal and forensic experts as psychic detective, resolving forgotten murder cases, as well as exploring haunted houses, cemeteries, abandoned caves, and concentration camps. Eventually would advance Peter Anthony into becoming an overnight success in television. Peter Anthony has appeared on The Lisa Gibbons Show, Borderline, Fact or Fiction, Beyond Belief, Celebrity Seances, the History Channel, Spirit Talk, and numerous morning daytime TV shows. Peter has also been a guest on radio shows such as Coast to Coast with George Norrie, Midnight FM, The Age of Truth, Dark 30 Radio, The Outer Limits, The Art Bell Show, and iHeartRadio. Mr. Anthony is featured guest on 3 documentaries, AE Beyond the Grave, Afterlife, and The Open Door by French film director Anthony Shin, who we interviewed a couple days ago. Peter Anthony's worldwide book tour has propelled him to becoming a defining speaker for near-death experiences. Peter Anthony's book, Keymaster, inspired by his own near-death experience, has been indoctrinated into the Edgar Cayce Library. Peter is now currently in production with a new television document series, as well as finishing his next book, The Accidental Prophet. Whether it is clear to us or not, there is an undeniable order to our universe. The Keymaster trilogy book series explores 2 provoking questions. What happens when we die? And is there life elsewhere? Absolutely, there's life elsewhere. So Peter wanted me to mention this to, I just saw 111. I always see these angel numbers all the time. They're just so profound. Peter wanted me to mention to Grant that, tell Grant that the near-death experiences are related to Nordic angels. He'll appreciate that. And on my walk this morning, I was listening to Jim Simivan. He said that his wife had lunch with Dr. Eben Alexander. And although this is not mentioned in any of his books, because his publisher said, you don't want to go there. So he privately told Jim Simivan's wife that Eben Alexander encountered ETs in his near-death experiences. To me, all of that makes sense. Why some ET groups, for lack of better words, tell people when they say, well, where are you from? And the ET's comments are like, you're not going to understand where we're from. And some would say, we come from the place where you call afterlife. And to me, that makes total sense, because this is just a container. So, all right, Peter, have at it.
Well, first of all, I mean, I kind of agree with Evan. You know, I also was instructed the same thing. You don't want to go down that rabbit hole of ETs and Nordic angels. And, you know, so I agreed to do so. So there was a big chunk of my book, Keymaster, which was dedicated to the Nordic angels. So throughout the storyline, I introduced the Nordic angel, not calling it a Nordic angel, but let the reader come to their own understanding of who they think this person or entity might be. Yeah. This way, it allows the reader to have their own information rather than me explaining to who this person is. And then we go down a whole bunch of questions that maybe some readers not quite ready to hear yet. So I introduce it throughout the storyline, and actually all 3 of my books. Which is very important of why they're here. In particular, what I discovered years and years and years later in my research of writing my second book, which is almost finished, that these Nordic angels, tall, blonde, blue-eyed, androgynous, ageless entities come to people who are about to have near-death experiences or after near-death experiences. And also in my research, talking to other near-death experiencers, some of us have had these encounters during what I call the moment of conflict or the moments of crisis, usually is at the point of death, what we refer to as the impact of death. And so I think mine began way before my near-death experience. It wasn't until later on I began to kind of look at this stuff. Well, this is very odd. Looking back when you're writing a book, you write and rewrite and write and rewrite, and then as you're going down this arc of each character, I began to realize, oh my God, these Nordic angels, I refer to them as, you can call them whatever you want, but they all had the same appearance. You remember everything about them, Cindy, but you never remember their name. You can ask a million times, what's your name? Who are you? That never stays in consciousness. What's interesting, you remember what they had on, the event, the time, what they said to you, everything. But it's almost as though once you ask who they are and they give you that information, within seconds, it's gone. So I've never quite figured that out why. So as I said, so for me, I think the most profound thing that took place in my life, as I said, happened one night. I was on my way to St. Thomas. This is back in the 80s when I was working for CBS. And I was at a horrible time in my life. And I remember at that time being agnostic. And I remember I just went to my knees and said, God, just send me an angel. And I was coming out of the gym. And I remember the Pet Shop Boys. That was like a popular song back then. The Pet Shop Boys, Send Me an Angel. And I was singing that song. And I was like, just said, send me an angel, God. I really don't believe it. Send me an angel. I never realized that in St. Thomas, this is where it would take place. And it has happened in my life since 1983 until my last encounter, which was 2007, in the San Jacinto Mountains. And all Easter, which is interesting. Being born and raised Catholic, once I lost my family in my late teens and early 20s, I kind of went through my faith of being a Catholic and believing in nothing. So for me to experience something like this, I was more in doubt. So throughout my encounters, I never really believed that there were the angels, because as a Catholic, I was raised at Michael and Gabriel and Raphael, etc., but never realizing that there were angels that were sent here to give us information about our planet and why. So it became my quest to understand who these angels are. And again, I think the near-death experience compounded that.
Yeah. Makes
Can I
sense.
ask you one question about that? Is it, when you're talking to them, it's telepathic, I assume, and is it one person, one particular person who's doing the talking, or are they all talking to you?
I've had one encounter, actually two, both male, female, and this happened in St. Thomas. I never could remember the angel's name. I say angel. I mean, what else would you call it? It was certainly an advanced being, someone that when you meet, you just felt the presence of, I want to say the godlike energy. Yeah. I mean, it was certainly divine. So I never remember their names. So in my mind, I just gave them names that I could remember. I called Brussels, the angel that I met, Brussels, because I remember him talking about Brussels, especially during the World War II. So that was my association of identifying who this man was, calling him Brussels. And then I heard the name Solivia while I was in St. Thomas, and therefore she became Solivia. And so, as I said, so throughout my history, these two entities have just kind of tap danced across my life patterns, and at critical times in my life, near-death experiences, and all those times, what I referred to, many of us who've had near-death experiences, there's a term that I use, and I kind of coined, it's called the exit point. An exit point, and we all had exit points. An exit point is a close call with death. Not a near-death experience where you flatline and you cross over and you have your life review or PPV, but you have an exit point like a car collision, or you have an example like an attack in the ocean by a shark, or like me, I fell off a mountain. All these things were referred to as exit points, but I didn't die. But always this angel or angels, if you will, guardian angels, would show up at these critical times of my life. One time in particular, I was in Sedona, and I was hiking up a mountain called, or it's one of the cathedrals called Bell Rock. And I was hiking up there, and I remember you learn as a hiker that the path that takes you up to the top of the mountain is the same path that takes you down the mountain. Well, I was young and impetuous, and I remember getting up at the top of the mountain. I was waving down to all my friends, and there was a ranger there waving at me like, it's closing time, got to go. And I was like, oh dear. And they kept motioning me to come down. So I thought, okay, well, I saw this path that I thought, well, I just go down this path, just have to jump over this little cliff, and then I'll just hike all the way down. It seemed at that time a clear path down to the mountain, at the edge of the mountain, the foot of the mountains. And as I was jumping over, I slipped on sand. And as I began to fall through this cliff, I remember my knapsack got caught on a branch, and I was dangling for my life. And I could see the ranger and my two friends down, this was in Sedona, looking at me with their hands just cupped to their face. Just that whole panic. And I must say, I thought, okay, I guess this is how I'm going to die. That's what I did. Everything went in slow motion. And the next thing I know, this hand reached down and pulled me up.
Wow.
And what I saw was this blue-eyed, androgynous young boy, girl, who could tell, pull me up, and I just was shocked. And you have 1,000 questions that run in your mind, and I remember saying, "Who are you?" and "Thank you," and just smiled and kind of disappeared into the mountains. That was one time in my life that just made me realize, oh my God, I was so close. Wow. So, there's something to this divine order that I think as we navigate towards a more advanced consciousness, what I'm seeing is that there's a lot more that we haven't even tapped into yet.
Yeah.
And that's what's exciting to me, because I look at your generation and certainly the younger generation, and I have to dedicate this talk to you guys, because I think what you guys are doing is amazing, because your information and your knowledge and your openness towards this subject matter was much different when I had my near-earth experience. I was booed. I wasn't spoken to. I was asked to leave parties. I was at the time on sightings, and I remember traveling to go to Nashville. I was at 24-hour fitness working out. I was asked to leave because of the subject matter. So as I said, today's consciousness, well, first of all, I'm grateful. And second of all, I'm pleased that all this information is finally coming out.
I'll send you, if Cindy reminds me, I'll send you a section of a chapter in a book I wrote, and it's called The Third Man Effect, which is what you experienced. And you have experiences where Charles Lindbergh, when he's flying across the ocean, he had this person guiding him, keeping him awake in the back seat. And all sorts of mountain climbers who talk about the third man effect, that they got help going up the mountain and stuff. So when you said that, I went, wow, that's like a very common story. So I'll send you my chapter, which has maybe
I would love that.
A dozen
or
more
idea.
cases that are very similar, where the guy just disappears. Where he's like, my friend went off a cliff in BC with a car, and he said he was raining, and he's climbing up, and he said suddenly this guy's climbing with him, and he's going, "What are you doing?" And he got to the top, and he's badly injured, and he's standing there, and he's looking around for the guy, and the guy was gone. So it's almost like a helper, right? But it is
a helper. At least that's how I looked at it at the time. And again, when you're writing, and I'm sure you've written many books as well. You do a lot of research, you do a lot of investigating, and I was just talking about synchronicity. I kept stumbling across these encounters with angels. I remember going to, at that time, the exec producer of Touched by an Angel, and I shared with him my encounter, and it sounds like something we should put on our show, but they never did. But I'll ask you, you guys, my encounters, which I find interesting, have either happened in the mountains at sunset or in the oceans at sunset. And so my encounters have been at what I have done after I became very clear about what my path was. I began to celebrate my 11/11 near-death experience and traveling around the world, going to various vortexes, Sedona, Maui, Glastonbury, Stonehenge, et cetera, et cetera. And what I would do, I would go to my knees and offer myself as an instrument to be used for the next year as a vessel of information. I also would do a gratitude list of thank you, God, for this particular moment in my life. Thank you for this interview, which I'll be doing this coming 11/11 in Santa Barbara this year. And I will bless everything that has been given to me in 1 year. And I keep a diary of all the people, the conversations that I encounter along the way. So when I go to these different vortexes, I send them out to the universe and I say, thank you so much for these encounters. For me, what that does, it sends kind of like a code to the universe, where that point of gratitude, the more you are in a place of gratitude, the more gracious you are with your life, I believe that the more comes your way. And so I've been blessed with many, many situations that I call uncanny. I think part of being a paranormal investigator and working on unresolved cases surrounding the paranormal world, that taught me to open my mind. And then I think after I began to see that there were ghosts and spirits on a lesser level of consciousness, then I began to open myself to other possibilities. And then everything just kind of exploded.
Wow. Yeah. I was forced through, and it's sort of like this awe and curiosity. They get you going where you're trying to figure it out. It doesn't make any sense. And they get you in. And I remember I was taken through two things. And I didn't even know they existed. So you talked about the one, the gratitude meditation. And they took me through this. And I never knew such a thing existed. I mean, I was like, I had never heard of it before, but they forced me through it. And a compassion meditation was the other one, where I'd never really, I realized people were doing these kind of things in their regular life, but they forced me through it. So you see these parallels with this encounter with the intelligence. I call it the intelligence, whatever it is that brings you through. So it seems like you're like a vessel in terms of sharing. Do you think this is a mission for you that you came here to do this kind of stuff?
You know, I wish I could jump right in there and said, say that. Yes, I went kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
I am a very black and white, left brain, logical. If it doesn't make sense, it's not true until I figure it out. That changed. And that began to change when I started doing vortex work. As I said, I had an incident with Sedona, with Bell Rock. I had an incident, with a shark attack in Maui. I had a head-on car collision in Los Angeles. And I'm going to give you guys this because I haven't quite figured it out yet. But it's happened to another person that can testify to this. This is late at night. 1:11. I remember looking at my clock, my Honda at the time, going down La Brea back into West Hollywood. And I had this head-on car collision. And I can tell you this, there was this blue wobble of light, kind of like a shield, but transparent. And as the car ran the red light, the man was asleep at the wheel. And I could see I didn't know it was his daughter at the time, this little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, trying to wake her daddy up. And at the point of collision, I felt our car, again, in slow motion.
Yeah.
Our cars, as listening audience, you don't get this, just put it on pause. But the cars basically, as though they went through each other, and you could feel that wobble of light, kind of like a divine protection. Now, here's the uncanny thing about this. I could see the perspiration on his face when he woke up. That's how strong and close we were.
Wow.
And as we had this very slow head-on car collision, once impact took place and each car went off in its opposite direction, I remember getting back to the other side of the road and spinning out of control and stopping. The uncanny thing about this, and I say uncanny because how else would we explain it? There was no damage to either car. And both this young man and his daughter and we were looking, sounds so shallow. We were looking at our cars for damage, because there was just no way that, I mean, your mind, you go back to black and white logic. This is how things normally work in a real world, right? So you are looking at your car and the tires and the fender and the bumper and, everything, nothing. And I remember this man just looked at me and I looked at him. Anyway, so I write about this in my next book called The Excellent Prophet. It opens up with the car crash, and it kind of leads you into this angelic encounter as well. So wait till the book comes out. But but the point being is that I've learned throughout my life that these points of conflict, these exit points, there's always been some entity, some guardian angel, something more divine than certainly I can understand, stepping in. So as I said, so for me, I think my mind has opened to so many possibilities. And then, I think, Greg, you'd appreciate this, and Cindy, I go off and do vortex work. And this is where I begin. It's almost as though I would have to slow down my life in order to upgrade. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Slow down, get in a place called peace, do my gratitude list, and just say, provide me the people, the places, and the situation. And my job was to show up in faith, not in fear, but in faith. And that's how I have lived my life.
Yeah, that's almost like sometimes we wrote about it in contact modalities as like a trauma point where things will shift, and the whole concept that's when people become sort of psychic, they pick up talents and stuff like that through this, and
I agree. I agree.
It's really amazing, and I think it's kind of an honor to be a part of that. Like, I mean, it's like most people in life have no clue that these kind of things are possible. And you and I are living in the middle of this story, which is going to be the biggest story of all times once it all is all understood.
Well, I think for me, one of the things I learned in my life review, and it's been a challenge for me, and I swim towards that side of consciousness because when I believe it and I know it to be so, and sometimes it's difficult, but the opinions of other people, especially in what I do, there are a lot of my friends who found out about what I do on YouTube, and they come up and criticize me, and my near-death experience taught me that someone else's opinion does not matter. What matters is standing in my truth. Yeah. And so I go with that bullseye on my back at times in an ordinary world where people, as I said, that don't believe in this, and they have a tendency to not, they don't look at you favorably. And that sometimes hurt. And I think why it hurts, when you come back as an experiencer from the other side, you feel everything. Yeah. You feel war, you feel famine, you feel, the consciousness going in the wrong direction. Yeah. I wake up at nighttime and I have these horrible dreams of war and children and women and men starting. And I have to get up in the middle of the night and just shake it off, because it's almost as though I'm remote traveling to these places of conflict and seeing. So it's those things for me matter. And I think we are in critical times we are accelerating with information, accelerating with our consciousness. But at the other end of that spectrum, there's also that what I call the unawakened, the people who don't care, and they're shifting just as much as we are. Yeah. So there's almost like a polarity consciousness. So for me these days, standing in my truth is more important than other people's opinions.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, Cindy and I have had this discussion a number of times. She was very concerned, like her ex-husband and people, she calls them being asleep. And I said, because I get a lot of experiencers, UFO experiencers, who'll come to me and they'll say, my wife doesn't understand, my kids don't understand. Her kids took an injunction to stop her from writing a book. And I said, get used to it. It's the pattern. It's almost like it's part of to keep you grounded. So you're almost like a plan that you have these people surrounding you so you don't float away and get crazy with what you're doing. Is it sort of, you got to be sure, like my father was like that. I had to be very sure before I talked to him, because I knew he was going to be very critical, that you've got to have all your ducks in a row. You can't just sort of say something that is kind of crazy or whatever. So I think it's a grounding type thing to me. It's like, because it's abs in the UFO community, it's absolutely a common pattern. That's what happens in the UFO community. They'll have conferences and stuff where people go to the conference, and then you have these meetings in the morning. It starts an hour before because nobody wants to be seen going in these meetings, but they're like a support group, like AA. They go in there and then they tell their story, and people are crying, and this is my family, because nobody's ever listened to their story. They can finally tell their story, and they're in this room, and it's this bonding that they have, and then they disappear out of the room, and so that's very powerful. But I think it's part of the pattern in terms of keeping us grounded. What do you say,
There was
Cindy?
a, there was a fireman that came to listen to me speak when I was in Denver. I was one of the keynote speakers at this particular event, and I mean, he waited in line, and
Yeah,
you're signing books, and people are
yeah,
asking questions, and you're up there for an hour and a half talking about your subject, and then people want to know more about you, and that you have
yeah,
that private one-on-one with those who are interested. And this man uh, just followed me all the way out to the cab,
yeah,
and he was the last person, and I could see tears building up in his eyes, and so I stopped, and I said, "Is everything okay?" And he just hugged me, and he told me, like we just said, his wife didn't believe him, his children didn't believe him. He felt so isolated. And he said, "I just came here on a whim to listen to you speak because you talked about the number codes that I've been seeing throughout my life.
wow,
And that's why I showed up." And he shared his story with me. And I have to tell you, I was just stunned. He said, I'm sharing my story with you for the never other than my wife, who
yeah,
doesn't believe me. And he just hugged me as though I set him free. So,
yeah,
I look at it this way. You never know what the divine plan is. Sometimes when I start my day, I always say, "Okay, God, let's see what we have in store for me today." And then I go out with an open heart and allow the universe to send to me whoever is supposed to be in my path, whatever reason. And that has been something that I'm seeing more occurring more regularly in my life. And so it's been amazing. So I think sometimes when I go back to standing in our truth, it's not about those people who don't believe.
yeah,
They're not going to believe. Where I'm in life right now is I'm talking to those ears who get it, because they're the ones who need to hear it.
yeah,
And those who are not going to get it, flowers bloom at different times. I can put the seed, plant it in the ground, and let it grow whenever it's supposed to grow. But for me, I'm going to talk to those people right now who are willing to and listening to the possibilities of what's out there. And, it's like this. If you and I and Cindy can shift consciousness by one person at a
yeah,
time,
yeah,
that's how we do it.
yeah.
That's in my opinion, but that's
Yeah.
how I feel
So
how it's done.
so this would be like a mission in terms of you feel inclined that you're to share your story, because a lot of experiencers will tell the story, even near-death experiences. They won't leave you alone until you tell the story. They just keep bugging you, tell the story, and the one woman said, "I'm not writing your damn book. I'm not writing your like, oh, timing is everything. You should do this," and kept bugging her, and she actually tried to commit suicide a couple times. She just couldn't take it. And that's the thing, is that like they want this message out. And it's almost like you volunteer to come in and do this, to go through this trauma, pick up these abilities, and then move one person at a time along where the consciousness is rising. Because that's what happens, if, especially if you're in Hollywood, like with you or people you're doing documentaries, people will watch it not believing, but it's just like a TV show, and they sort of, well, it's a TV show, and they watch it, and they don't realize that their consciousness is actually rising. It's actually rising up, and that's what's happening. Is all the people are telling their stories, and we rise up. The same as in the United States, everybody was telling these conspiracy stories 10 years ago. Nobody would believe it, and now it's like the whole society's shifted, where this is common practice, where you can see a society shift and consciousness shift. So I think you probably agree this is part of your job, my
Well,
job,
I
Cindy's
think for
job.
me, the fact of using numerology as a guide point,
Yeah.
numbers don't lie, people do. Um, I happen to believe that. I mean, 1 and 1 is 2. It's not 49.
Yeah.
And so as I began to use numerology as a way to solve crime, numerology as a way to go into these paranormal cases, people don't realize, well, there's a first responding officer, and there's a time. There is he also or she has a birthday. I look at the address of where I'm going. Everything is basically, it goes back to math. And so I'm looking like a mad scientist with all these numbers all around me, knowing numerology the way I do these days, and just kind of, digesting and analyzing and processing and then giving information. And it just seems to work. So here's a good example. And you'll go into my website. I wrote 2020 and beyond. And yet here we are. And I wrote in this article, it just came out of me, about 2020, and numerology is called hindsight. And hindsight is we get a perspective of where we have been and also what we should be doing and where we're going. And I spoke of 2020 as if we don't get our together by 2025, there'll be a negative shift in consciousness. And yet here we are. Again, back to what I said, numbers don't lie, people do. And so, as I said, so I base everything I do on mathematical equations. It just works for me. And again, I've been doing this, studying these numbers that I saw on the other side since my near-death experience. When I began to see 333 and 222 and 555 and 999 and 777 back in the 80s and the 90s, no one knew what these numbers were. I would go off and do near the lectures, and I was asked not to speak about these codes. Wow. I was asked not to speak about prophecies, what we call planetary visions for those who've had near-death experiences, or personal prophetic visions, PPVs. And so even in my own near-death community, I was not allowed to talk about these things, but I thought, you know what? I know what I saw on the other side. I know what I experienced on the other side. So therefore, I will share it. And again, going back to that theme, flowers bloom at different times. And yet here we are. Here we are with information that has been in our consciousness. So you can't go anywhere without 222 or 333 for those of us who are awakened and seeing these numbers. We didn't have Google. So I went to the library and I had to learn each number one at a time. And the random numbers, there was no numerology books. There were no numbers on 222 or these, what I call these angel codes back in the 90s or 2000 until 9/11. Then everything shifted in consciousness.
Wow.
So for me, it's been my savior.
Can you talk a little bit about your first encounter with the numbers, like your experience going over and then encountering the numbers? Because we actually, I don't know if Cindy knows, but we're actually interviewing a girl by the name of Candace. She's a longtime numerologist, so she'd be very interested in hearing this part of your story.
Okay. Well, it began on my near-death experience on November the 11th. At 11:11 p.m., I clinically died in operating room 11.
Wow.
So 11/11, 1987, in operating room 11. Got it? All right. My next near-death experience took place on 07/04/09. So think about 07 is 7 over here, 04. So you add 7 and 4, right?
Yeah.
That's 11. 2009, 2 plus 9 is 11. Got it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I thought, okay, quinky dinky, nah. If it happens again, I'll really pay attention to it. You guys, I had a heart attack this past February.
Wow.
I was going to teach I teach kickbox, martial arts, self-defense classes. And I knew that ICE was coming here. So I was going to try and teach women and men how to do some basic, self-defense moves to help them in situations. I'm going out of a heart attack. I didn't know at the time I had a heart attack. So I drove myself to the hospital and I went on Google, and this one I'm having these pains and, I thought this is not good, whatever it is. So I thought I self-diagnosed and I must have some kind of gout or something. So I went into the emergency room. I said, I'm having a gout attack. They all looked at me like I was crazy. And they did the vitals and what have you. And then the doctor comes in. He said, Mr. Anthony, you're in the stages of a heart attack. I said, there's no way. I'm fit. I've been 150. I have a six-pack stomach. I work out. I ride 25 miles on my bike every day. So we were having a heart attack. Here's what happened. They called the paramedics. They put me into the ambulance. And the next thing I know, there was this woman with this iPad. And she said, well, Mr. Anthony, we need you to sign this waiver. And I said, what waiver is it? He said, well, we need to have permission. We're going to have to use shock paddles on because we don't think you're going to make it to the hospital. And I said, and they're all the paramedics. Wow. I remember this man's name was Damon. He was so nice and so kind. He's the paramedic, just lifted me into the ambulance. I said, this can't be real. And he's just kind of shaking his head, smiling, kind of like, yes, it is. And I said, well, what time is it? And she said, it's 11:11. I said, we're okay. I'm not worried about it. And I thought it's not time for me to go yet. So, for some reason they keep bringing me back. And so I'm going with the flow of, you have something to do here, kids, so do it. But again, 1111, what is this? Why does this happen? So as I began to study 1111, for those of you who see this number randomly, it's the awakening. It's the awakening of our consciousness. And the 222 is a number in numerology that's ruled by Libra: balance, fairness, integrity, peace. And then when you're seeing 333, which is one of the divine, it's the Christ consciousness. And every time I was having these encounters, I would have an encounter and I'd look up and it's 333, or I'd be at 333 Geary Street in San Francisco, or a cab was driving by and I'd see 444. And I'm like, this is just so bizarre. When I went to Denver, as I arrived at the airport, and I remember going out, and I have it on my iPhone, I went out to get the cab, and all around me were these cabs of 444 and 777 and 555 and 999. I'm looking around going, oh my God, this must be a divine trip. So I'm snapping pictures with my iPhone of all these numbers. So you have to know that, was that meant for me? Just because, I'm awakened? I don't know. But I tuned into it and I thought there's something divine to this happening, and why. I go back to that logic. I need to know why, who, when, what, and where. That's just how I think. And that's part of being a mathematical, I guess, I'll call myself a novice, because there's so many other great numerologists who are really good at their game. So I'm still
was it a download process that you were given this ability?
I'm sorry?
Was it a download type process that was given you this ability?
Absolutely. Without a doubt. It was a download, and I'm still being downloaded, especially at nighttime. I'll wake up, and as I mentioned, I have these nightmares of war that's going on our planet, and just around everywhere. And I see these children, and I see dogs and cats, and the cruelty of what's going on. And I wake up in these sweats, and I'll go and get some water, and I'll look at the clock, and it's 444. And it's at that time I say, okay, God, we need your divine protection for the planet. And I say prayers for the children and the animals and the women and the men who are suffering, the rages of war.
Yeah.
And that sounds silly, but at least I feel like I'm doing something. So yes, the 444, the 1111, the threes, I think for me, the most profound is when I see the zeros, because that's what I saw on the other side. 000, 0.000, 0.111, 0.11.00.1.0. Just, it's almost like this geometric code all around me. And think of the Matrix, when Neo was having the second installment, he's having all these little frames of his life and all the encounters and all these different codes all around. And that's how I kind of see it. For me, it makes more sense to see it in those diagrams like that. And every time I see it, I stop what I'm doing. I say a prayer to the divine. I ask to be of service. I ask to be courageous during this time of conflict. And may I share kindness on this planet at that time. That's what I do every time I see that number, any triple code. It just helps me shift into a place of gratitude.
Wow. Fascinating. Cindy, you got something?
So I wanted to go back and talk about that car accident that Peter was talking about. I feel like after listening to the story, because I really, I'm beginning to understand the holographic nature of the universe. I feel like you were going through a portal, not in the third dimension, but you have had to gone through a different dimension through a portal for the impact to be like almost nothing. Because that's the only way that makes any sense.
Well, it's interesting you use the word portal, because as I said, I began to travel around the world celebrating the 1111, which is my birthday. And so if you understand these ley lines, if you go to the pyramids, if you go to Stonehenge, if you go to Maui, to Sedona, all these vortexes on the planet, they're portals. They're portals of energy. And when you are aligned with gratitude and you are aligned with being a servant of the divine and to here to help, why would you not receive information in that portal? And that's, as I said, during that time of traveling, when I would come back, it was just almost though everything in my life was accelerated. And I began to see some of the most, I guess the word is miraculous, just things that are unexplainable, beyond.
Yeah.
So as I said, so it's not that I said, "Oh, look at me, I'm special, and all this is happening to me." No, I was very humbled by it. Many times I was brought to my knees crying because I was just so amazed by the beauty of what I saw. And I guess for me, one of the most magical encounters that took place in my life too, Canterbury, in the UK. I had just visited Stonehenge, and nothing happened there for me. So I was very disappointed. I said, "Okay, I'll go to Canterbury," and because I love cathedrals. And I went in there, and again, that blue-eyed, white hair, everything goes in pause mode. It was just, I still to this day I went into the catacombs with this entity who took me. It's called Lady Undercroft. Undercroft is in Canterbury, where during, I guess it was King Henry's, was it not Henry VIII? So it must have been either the 5th, the 1200s. I don't know what king that was at the time, when he would invade Canterbury and kill the nuns and the monks, etc. So they would all hide in the Undercroft. And the Undercroft is where they had their relics and their Bibles and all the values of the church. So he took me there, and he gave me this missal that was from years and years and years ago about war. And this was it was a prayer dedicated to Our Lady Undercroft, considered Mary. And I read this, and I didn't realize that for years I kept reciting this prayer over and over and over again. And here I'm in this catacomb with this priest, angel. I was blown away. So as I said, so I began to realize that when we, as fellow travelers on this planet, really get into our state of we're here to help. We are enlightened beings. We've come at this period of time to raise the vibration of the planet, whether it be through ETs, whether it be through the near-earth experiences, whether it just be through our one-on-one encounters with our neighbors. We're here as light beings, and I think it's so important that the more we raise our own personal vibration, the more we're able to raise the vibration of the planet.
Yes.
And that sounds kind of witchy woo-woo, but that's just how I believe, or have come to believe.
I personally believe that too. I personally believe that I chose to incarnate in this timeline to help raise consciousness. And I think the easiest way to help progress humanity and help raise consciousness is really through random acts of kindness in service to other. And to understand that when you meet somebody who, let's say I'm at a grocery store and somebody bumped my cart and then kind of looked at me like, "You're in my way." Really, it wasn't my fault. It was the person coming to, accidentally bumped into me. Normally you would think, well, what's wrong with this person? But I think we need to step aside and think, I wonder what that person's morning was like or day was like for the person to be so angry. So instead of reactive, you react with compassion and understanding. And then you completely de-escalate the whole situation. So I think, when people say, well, what am I supposed to do? That's a perfect example. We're all warriors on this earth, and we're all fighting battles, and we need to just have compassion, understanding, and understand that a lot of people, instead of living in love, they live in fear. And I think that's one reason why the planet is in such turmoil, because we're not spiritually aligned, we are materialistic, and we live in fear. So I think it's our job, people like us, to help raise consciousness, to kind of help make the veil thinner. The Grant has said that I think that my family's asleep. I don't think most people are not just asleep, they're walking dead. I mean, they're just not in touch. They forgot that we came from source and that we are magnificent beings. And I mean, as of lately, I feel incredibly powerful. I feel like I'm a magnificent being co-creating with source. It's so much fun to be a giver, so much fun to give love. It's so much fun to smile at a stranger. Those are just such small act, but very, very profound. So I encourage everybody to just practice random acts of kindness and service to others. To start there, it's that simple.
Well, I kind of keep my philosophy very simple. And I can't say that I claim this to be my mantra because it was given to me by someone. But I think the true test of our spirituality is not so much, meditating on the top of the mountain, but 5 o'clock rush hour traffic downtown Los Angeles. Because if you can navigate and think about what I just said, we go to the top of the mountain and we get in our own, say our prayers, and that's great. That's wonderful. But try that 5 o'clock rush hour traffic when someone's flipping you off and someone's doing figure eights in the freeway, and we are spiritually inclined people, and the ego gets in the way. They could have wrecked us, our car, so I really have to think about that at times. I had someone in the car with me one time, and I was saying someone cut me off in LA, and he rolled his window down, and I thought, oh God, please don't flip them off, whatever, because I'm not going to. And he did this. And I said, what are you doing? He said, that's the peace symbol. And so anytime he got mad, that's what he did. And I thought, I kind of like that. So, I just said, you kind of look at life through different lenses. And I love that. I thought it was simple and it made sense to me, and I apply it. So, and what I do actually, when I'm talking to spiritually inclined people, when I say goodbye, I do the peace symbol on my heart, and I make a bow, and I send them off on their way.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
instead of this, do this.
yeah, this. And they look at you like, and then they kind of get it. You don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think for me, the codes, going back to what I said, circle back around to these codes, and let me ask you this, Cindy, have you seen any other numbers? Have you seen the triple codes, 3s, 4s, 7s, any number in particular besides the 11s?
So
111?
So I left my husband after 30 years in June of 2023, and it was really scary because I never thought that I would leave my marriage. I always thought that I would be married forever. So it was a courageous act, but at the same time, it was daunting because I didn't want to be alone. And then after talking to you, when I had that wonderful session, and again, I can't say enough about your session. I think, viewers who are watching really take the time to book a session with Peter. I started to see 1111. So now that I see, ever since I started seeing 1111, I just say my affirmation prayers. So the numbers that I see all the time are 1111, 111, 555, sometimes 444. Then last year, and I never saw these numbers before, last year when I was kind of uncertain about a situation, I saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 1234.
Oh,
I had never seen 1234.
1234.
Yeah.
I saw that today. I was logging on to onto my iPad, and I was just up, and I'll get here early and sit down and just kind of putz around. And I plugged it in and came over here into my living room, and I looked at the clock. It's 12:34, and so it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's also an angel code, and it goes in alignment with the 111 or the 1111. Focus on your mission. 1 is independence. 2 obviously is the mission of peace. 3 is to communicate. And 4 is about earth and all its worldly. It's the abundance number. So you add that up, and it's just quite amazing. So to see 1234 or 12 12 12 or 10 10 10, these are definitely codes. And again, start paying attention to the 9s and the 7s that come into your life, because when these numbers show up, then it's followed by the 0s. And when the 0 shows up, people go, well, I've never seen any zeros. I said, well, you can be driving down the freeway and go by a car dealership, and you'll see 000 financing. To me, that's the God code. And I think the more aware you become to these numbers that are before you, then you'll start noticing a dialogue. I went to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and it was a great sold out event. And I was thrilled because I thought, I'm going to Chattanooga. I thought maybe 5 people would show up, and must have been 500 people there easily. Uh, and I remember these people coming up to me and talking about these codes that they were seeing, and I thought, oh my God, they're seeing it here in Chattanooga as well. Then I went to Santa Barbara, and this whole book tour. Listen to this: Seattle, Santa Barbara, San Jose, San Diego, Virginia. Where else did I go? I'm trying to remember. Salt Lake City. I can't remember all the different places I went to. But all these young people kept coming to my lectures, and they were all sitting up front. When I say young people, 11, 12, 15, 16, college age, all there in the front, or they're in the far, I guess their left corner, my right, my extreme right, in the back or up front. So I remember I was talking about the codes, and it happened at Seattle. And I just said, how many here are seeing? And I just named up the number. And everyone in the front row raised their hands. And in the back row, the same thing. So I went to San Francisco. I went to Berkeley. The same thing. These young people were showing up, and they were already acclimated to these codes. And I was like, oh, my God, there's something to this. So as I said, and then you go online on Facebook, and you see all the different posts, all the different codes. And I'm thinking, we are in an age right now of great information.
Wow. That, the big number in the ufology field now, do you do premonitions or future stuff? Because the big thing in the UFO community now is talking about 2026, 2027 for contact with non-human intelligence. Are you getting anything of that?
We're already there. We're already there. And I think that what I go back to that article I wrote 2020 and the hindsight article. February the 2nd or February the 20th, 2029, if we as a collective consciousness don't get it together, we are going in the very wrong direction. So I think these entities that are coming in are happening to a lot more people, and a lot more information is coming out. But we're also in a time too where information is being suppressed. So I think people like you and these podcasts are very important. I think there should be a show of just all the different people who are having these encounters with ETs. I noticed there was a lot more in Los Angeles than where I live here in Palm Springs. I noticed there was a lot more in San Francisco than there were in Salt Lake City, but they're happening. Mm-hmm. So I do believe that something very powerful is coming, to the point that it's not only going to humble all of us, but it's near, much closer than we believe. And I also think that the information that's coming is critical and at times unbelievable, but we're ready for it.
Yeah. And
I think it's extremely important that we understand what we're about to go through. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. It's sort of glad to have people like you on board that are elevating the message in terms, and what would you say is the main message they want the world to know, if we sum it down to maybe 4 or 5 different things? Because in the UFO community, it's always about love as the basic core, oneness, everything's connected, everything's one, the environmental thing, everything's alive, everything's conscious, everything's connected. And so I was just wondering what kind of message you got. You had one near-death experience, or you had 3 events?
I've had 3.
Did you have near-death experience each time?
And the second one was so profound that when I got out of the hospital, there wasn't a day or night that I wasn't being downloaded on information. I couldn't walk, which happened to me my first near-death experience. So I was bound to bed, but I began to go back to doing my visualization, my homework, et cetera, blah, blah. But these gold lights would come into my room and just download information. But I think I'm going to throw this your way and ponder on this. I happen to believe in the theory of reincarnation. Yeah. And I happen to believe that you and I and Cindy and other people who are listening to this and who really understand this information, as I said earlier, we are light beings on this planet. But here's the thing too. I use this phrase, rise and fall. Think about it. if you and I lived in Atlantis or Lemuria or the Mayan time or Great Britain or the Roman period, whatever, there's always been this rise of the greats and the fall of the great. We're there now. And I think before we fall, which we're close to, I do believe that these entities are coming in because, imagine this intelligent being coming in, galactic beings coming in, and they're looking down and it's going, they just don't get it. This planet that we've been given, the waterfalls and the meadows and the animal kingdom and the mountains, the ocean, we're only tenants on this planet. And we are not good tenants. And I think they must look at us and going, just shaking their heads. So what is it going to take to get our attention? Whatever it is, it's going to be powerful because we're not paying attention. For those of us awakened, we're paying attention because we can feel it.
Yeah.
But there's also that other unawakened consciousness who just doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's all about the money. It's about the education. It's about the physicality of our bodies and how we look. It's all the wrong values. And then we have another consciousness that's trying to help. Yeah. So I kind of look at it this way. We're coming from a place of authenticity and caring and loving, or we're not. And I think that shift that's going to take place is imperative and it's needed now. And so, I'm kind of sitting back wondering what it is because I don't know. I can only share with you what I've experienced. And I think what I've experienced, when I look at it from my perspective, like, wow. Yeah. So I can't imagine. I mean, when I'm talking about the wow effect, I'm like, wow, that blue wobble, that wow, the angel pulling me off, off the tree branch with my knapsack over my head. Wow. The head-on car collision. Wow. If I've seen that, what else is coming that's going to go, wow, wow, wow. It's got to be pretty important, I think.
Yeah. But if there's a reincarnation world, the way I always look at it with you and Cindy and myself, it's sort of like whatever mess we find ourselves in, we probably, before we were born, we were told that this was going to happen and we volunteered for this. And so whatever, we got to take responsibility that we chose to be here at this time in this place in whatever mess we find ourselves in. And maybe we're here because we volunteered to do something that we said, well, put me in there. I'll help.
We all signed up. I sometimes go, I want to, please don't pick me again. I have enough. Yeah. But I don't know. I kind of, I'm not making it silly, but I kind of am because I do believe that we're here to do something. But I also believe that, I look at where we are, politically, and I get so many calls because I have clients all around the world.
Yeah.
And, they all have their political perspectives, viewpoints, et cetera. And I said, regardless of whether Kamala won or whether Trump won, we still have to do the work.
Yeah.
And so, we probably need to do a lot more work right now. And so I think it's, as I said, so for me, I tell you what, rather than me go down that road, I'm going to ask you something. What was it that changed your life? Why go down this path? I mean, you could have done anything, but this, for some reason, called you. Why? What is it in your life that propelled you to take a twist and turn to go down the road less traveled?
Well, I had it was I guess you call it a synchronistic event. There was UFOs being sighted in a small town near where I lived. I lived in a big city, but this town. So we went out, and my friend says they were seeing it in the newspaper. We said, "Oh, we'll go out and see this." But I had no interest in extraterrestrials or paranormal or anything. I was raised very religious, so I was, into where we're coming from, where we're going, stuff like that. But I had never engaged with the paranormal. And so we, after 3 months, then it was still going on, and we said, "Come on, let's instead of driving around the city, let's go out and see what they're looking at." And I remember we went out there and we drove around for an hour and nothing happened. And then my friend says, "Okay, we'll drive back into town one more time. If we don't see anything, let's go." I said, "Fantastic. It's been a total waste of time." We turned the car to go back in, and the thing flew right in front of the car. It was like it wanted to be close enough that it wanted me to be assured that you don't have to worry about this anymore. So I've never been interested in sightings. I always say to people who, sightings will tell you something's real, but it was always this question of where's it going? Because it was flying along, and the 2 nights later, I saw it came right at me, second night, and then it sort of flew away, and I'm watching, I'm going, what's it doing? It's not doing anything. So I was going like, this is a miracle. There are miracles. It's like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I had the honor of actually seeing this thing. I thought, oh, this is an extraterrestrial flying by. Then I'm going, but what's it doing? And there was always this question of what's actually going on. And then I suddenly realized that people, they give you the experiences, whether it's a traumatic experience or whatever, is to wake you up, because then you spend the rest of your life trying to figure out how did that happen, what's going on. And the other people, they're just in their life where their ego is sort of running it, and they're on their level and we're on our level. But we had this event, and I don't think it's random. I don't think this was random, because there was a number of things that happened to me that showed me that, oh my goodness, because there was one film that was taken there, and I didn't realize till maybe 30 years later that the guy had shot the film just as this thing jumped in the air, and I go, there's no way that happened. That's what got me out there. They had this film on the TV. And I went out and I said, that was random. This guy shot the film just as this thing jumped into the sky. And I said, they needed me to go out because I wasn't going to go. I didn't believe in it. So the story just kept going, kept going, kept going. And finally I went out there. And then it was the old idea. The second one was the almost like an awakening like yours. Like I call them awakenings, where I was watching Colin Andrews on the crop circles. And he's the guy that invented the crop circle term. And I was watching a lecture and I didn't care. I was daydreaming. And I was sitting there and just, I didn't want to be in the room, but he was a prominent guy. And that's when it came into my head and basically said, you wondered back in 75 what was going on. You want to know what's going on? It's consciousness. And it was like, it came, but we call it like a belief system. Like science has a belief system, a theory. We believe this is happening. We believe this, and it keeps changing all the time. And then you have a knowing. And this was a knowing. It was like I walked around for 2 days and went, oh my goodness, it was in my head. I couldn't get out of my head. And I knew for a fact that this was right. And I started to explore other people who had knowings, where that's why I'm so interested in near-death experience. So if you're on this side, your left brain, rational, analytical, ego mind is running the show, and it's almost always wrong. The theory keeps changing as to what's going on. And 100 years from now, science will be all different. We'll realize this was wrong, that was wrong, all this sort of stuff. And so there's on the other side is once you rip the veil and you go with a near-death experience, or whether an abduction experience, or you have a out-of-body experience or whatever, you're in that field where the information is all there and they give it to you. Like the material is there and it's never wrong. So a psychic who's able to get in the field, whereas the people in this world are just guessing. Their ego mind knows everything. It knows more about, paranormal than the generals. I know everything. And it's that mind is talking, and it's always wrong. But there's all this information is in the field. So when I heard your story where you go in the field and suddenly there's all this mathematics coming, people will talk about this download thing, that they knew everything in the universe. And so that's why I say, if you have near-death experience people, 31% who say at one point during the experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe, and 40% of experiencers for the on board a ship says they knew the answer to everything in the universe at one point, I say, don't you think it would be a good idea to maybe actually talk to these people? I mean, they actually at one point knew the answer, and you hear this stuff, and you hear, people coming with the same message, the same stories and stuff like that, and you realize these people have the answer to not easy things like how to make money or whatever, but why are we here? Like what's going on? And people never think about that till 3 months before they die, and the guy says you got 3 months to live. Then they go, oh my God, and they're trying to figure it out. Whereas you and I and Cindy, we spent our whole life on this thing trying to figure out, is there an afterlife? Who is talking to me? Is God? All this sort of stuff. And we're trying to put that whole thing together on a perspective of why we're here. Because we're not here to gather toys, that's for sure. Where that's what most people think. We're here to do something, especially if reincarnation is a fact. You didn't come in randomly, especially if you have like 3 near-death experiences. Most, like I said, 37% of experiencers have had a near-death experience, and most of them have had 2. And I say, well, what's the chances you've had 2 near-death experiences or 3 near-death experiences, and you've also been on board a ship? That's no way that's a chance. This is like, it's a pattern where it appears like you've volunteered for something, you've been chosen for something, and you've got material that's coming out of this field, which I think is extremely important. So I listen to you. I couldn't care less about the scientists who've got theories. Who cares what your theory is? Because
there's nothing like the hands-on experience. I mean, we can write books all we want, but ask them, have they had the experience?
Exactly.
No, they haven't.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
go to the person that's worked in the field and who's
Yeah.
been in the field, who
Yeah.
knows the field.
Yeah. And
And
they use the word knowing. That's the thing, is you will use the word knowing. I knew this was the answer. I've heard people who know how to do the download process. They work through it, they put it on a piece of paper beside the bed, then they just go and they forget about it, they go to sleep, and next morning or the next day, the answer's in their head. They know for a fact this is the answer. It's not an answer that might be right. This is the answer to it. And that's the important thing, is that you will get help if you surrender and you put yourself in the position, you will be given material, and that's how you get the material out of the field, which will help everybody. And so I'm honored to meet you and to all these people who have been in the field and know you're not guessing. You know for a fact that what you were told was true.
well, when you have the handshake of an angel or an intelligent being who's taken the time, think about this. They're spending
Yeah,
time with you.
yeah,
They could be over here talking to someone else, but I'm not saying they chose me because I'm special. I don't mean that at all. As I said, I went kicking and screaming. I was the one, no, 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 over there, over there. Um, but they kept coming back. So for me, it's kind of like that. I had to learn to stop living in the black and white world and sort of to learn to live in the gray world. And then I went from gray to the white world, and that's where I stay. And so, as I said, for me, it's just what works. Do I have all the answers? No. Have I seen a lot? Absolutely. Has it changed me? Absolutely. Am I ready for more? Absolutely. I'm grateful. I am so grateful. And I think that's what happened to me this past winter when I was in the ambulance and I asked who she was with the pad trying to sign me off on a waiver that they're going to use shock paddles. And I asked what time it was and she said 11:11. I thought, it's not time for me to go yet. I did a strong inventory of self. What do you need to do? What's important?
exactly.
What's your mission now?
Yeah,
And I feel like a reboot. I feel like a reset. I feel like a rethink. And I feel like a restructuring of my life taking place right now. And I'm also in a release of certain things that no longer serve purpose. So that's kind of where I am right now. What's the next step? I don't know, but I'm going to take the next indicated step wherever it takes me. And I think the other thing too, I'm very grateful. You said something earlier. I've had a fascinating life. I got out of the starting block, not such a good life. I was left in an orphanage. So, but I've had an amazing career. I was doing a gratitude list of all the different people who've come to my life. And I have to say that I've had some very powerful people who've stepped across my path who shared so much information with me. I had the great pleasure of working with Shirley MacLaine years ago and talk about a powerhouse.
yeah,
Good God. Then I encountered Greg Brady. It's just these people just kept showing up in my life. And then the other one too, Academy Award winner Greg Garson, who was into all this.
wow,
Wow.
yeah,
And all this back in the 40s and 50s when no one else was doing it, kind of like the Ruth Montgomery of her time. So I thought, it's almost like the divine had some kind of tapestry for me to pay attention to. And I always talk to these very powerful people. I always listen to their stories and find it fascinating. We all have these very interesting lives and where we are right now. So I again, today I have to say thank you so much. When Cindy sent me the email and I saw your name, I thought, oh my God, I'm thrilled. I just so
yeah.
honored to
It's
be a
it's
part
almost
of
like
your life today.
it's almost like I was thinking the other day that if you were to before your life to go back again and say you could be anything you wanted in the world, have all the money in the world, any position you want, would you live the life that you lived? And to me, it was like, well, absolutely. I mean, there's no way I'd want to do anything other than what I'm doing, because people always think that you have the tough times and you think somebody else has got it better. But I mean, I always refer to the fact that we are in the Super Bowl of all stories. I mean, if you realize what's going on, where you may be the water boy or the quarterback or whatever you are, but you're in the stadium. Most people don't even know there's a stadium. They don't even know there's a game going on. And we got to play in this game. And 500 years from now, when it gets reincarnation, they'll say, "Oh, it was Anthony." Oh yeah, everybody says they're Anthony. Yeah, it's Cleopatra and Anthony. Those are always. It's like people are going to be talking about these people are so lucky they were there when they realized that there was more to the world than the physical world, and we are.
Yeah, and so we're kind of like the veterans of our time, and again, not bragging and not
Yeah.
going to the state of ego, but going into a place of thank you,
Gratitude.
number one, for allowing me the choice to say yes to this,
Yes,
because
exactly.
that's important to me. I learned that on the other side. I was given a choice. Do you want to go back? After seeing everything that was coming into my life, what I saw in terms of past civilizations, the rise and fall, and I remember that voice saying, "Do you want to go back?" And I said yes, knowing what was before me. And again, I go back. What can I change your mind? I think I like it on the other side there. Come on. But I said yes, and I'm the kind of person that once I make a commitment, I cross the finish line. That's just who I am.
Wow.
Well,
Fascinating.
if you think about it, I've seen hundreds of near-death experience documentary. My first book was I read. Let me think. When did I read that book? Back in 19 early 1990. Raymond Moody's, or actually no,
Oh,
it was late 80s.
many lives, many lives, many masters, many
No,
lives.
that's Brian Wise.
Oh, Brad.
Raymond
Okay, got it.
Moody's
Yeah.
Life
Life,
After Life. Life After Life.
life after life. Yeah.
Yeah, he published it in 1975. So I read that book back in late 90s, no, late 80s. So I'm very, very familiar with near-death experience. And out of all the people that, all the stories, why is it that I reach out to Anthony? You have to think about the synchronicity, because I think that is how the universe communicates. It's fleeting, it's light as a feather, and it's synchronicity. So I truly believe, I think that we have more work to do, possibly even together, because why did our path cross? Because
Yeah.
it's not random.
There goes back that why. I'm always about. I think I people ask me, what was the very first word you said when you were a little boy? I said, why? I want to know why. I've always, why are the stars up there? Why is the sun setting? I was always about the why. And I'm still that way. I'm curious. And I think as long as we have that curiosity in our soul, it's kind of the key to agelessness. And it keeps our spirit alive and free. And it's just something that I treasure in myself. There's a bit of naivety to me, despite all the knocks I've had in life, but there's still that naivety that believes that we can all do this if we just show up as a collective consciousness. We're in the we consciousness now, not the I am conscious. We can't do this without each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I think what's most important, going back to what I learned from Brussels on the other side, it is about choice. And again, your choice to have me on this podcast today, your choice to talk about what we've spoken about, it's all about a choice. And
Yeah.
once we realize we have a choice, there's no victim. It's just you, and you are making the choices, be they good, be they wrong. Those are our choices. And so I really try to make the best possible choices. Not always. Sometimes I take a step back, but I really am aware of the choices that we all should be making right now. And as I said, it's important that we come together as a whole to help each other.
Yeah.
And
And
as
you're
long as
doing,
we're doing that, I think we will
yeah.
continue.
And then you're doing stuff that helps other people, which makes you feel good because you get the situation where people always say to me, I'm going to get off the karmic wheel. This is the last time I'm coming here. And I'm say, so what are you going to sit on a beach and for the next billion years and drink Mai Tais in Hawaii? Or what? How many billion years do you think you can sit on a beach and drink Mai Tai? I mean, it's totally boring. It's like when you're a little kid and you're in summer and there's nothing to do. And when I want something to do, what can I do? And we get this feeling that you're actually doing something. And what you're doing is you're making the universe more grand, more, helpful and stuff like that's what it's all about, is making the universe a better place, that everybody's doing that. And we're the only ones that are trying to grab, whoever's got the most toys when they die wins, this kind of thing, where the ego is running the show. But if you look at the beings, whether it's angels or aliens or whatever, that's all they're doing is they're helping. If you go on board a ship, there's no chandeliers, there's no leather furniture, there's nothing. They're working. They're basically trying to help as much as they can. And so I appreciate your
Mhm.
fact that you've got your life set on that idea of how can I help? How can I do this kind of stuff? How can I be an aid to what's going on around me?
Well, as I said, how may I be of service? Because I
Yeah.
really do mean that. I think it's important, for all of us, think about that. If I'm of service, if I'm donating my time, I'm donating my heart, I'm donating my talent, uh, like today, I think where two or more are gathered, we raise consciousness.
Yeah.
So, again, I look at it this way. You and I and Cindy having this conversation today, if one person, just one person,
Yeah.
really resonates with this message, we've shifted consciousness. And they will go and talk about it, and they'll shift someone else's consciousness. And one at a time, we begin to see the shift of where we should be going. We're there now.
Yeah.
We are there now. It just seems that there's a lot more noise on the other side that's trying to distract. But we keep getting in there, keep getting our message there.
So talk about synchronicity, okay? The angel numbers. I happened to pick up my phone because I wanted to share something, and this is just right after I said that it's not an accident that Peter and I have crossed paths, that there's more than likely work that needs to get done in the future. So that when I touched my phone, it was 222. And what does 222 stand for? Pay attention to important relationships. Partnerships are playing a key role in your life right now. How amazing is that? How amazing.
Well, you see what's interesting about that, as I said, where two or more are gathered, we are shifting consciousness. And I do believe that. I've seen it happen. I think where I am right now in my shift is I'm trying to find a tribe.
Yeah.
Because when I lived in LA, everyone there in the industry was just so much into this thought, of collective consciousness. It was very spiritually awakened consciousness in LA. I haven't seen that so much here where I'm living. It's there. It's kind of in the back shadows, but you do find it. I always say sometimes you have to step out on a dog shit to get to the playground, but it's there, and continue stepping. But as I said, I just think about that 222. That's, to me, I'm deeply touched because that's kind of like the sign from the universe saying, "Aha, see, where two or more are gathered, here we are." And two is also the number of peace and harmony, integrity and principle. It's also the number of balance. When you think of Libra, it's all about being fair. You can't be too spiritual and then void out the theme of abundance. We are always in a place of balance. You can't do one without the other. So as I said, that is a very important part of my life right now is balance. And I think what I do, my energy is sacred. Who I'm with, the conversations I have, where I go, that's sacred. And so therefore it's important that I have a connection to that, what I call that reciprocal energy, their sacred energy. I think when we all come together, just think about that. I mean, when we finish our conversation today, we're all going to go away feeling uplifted, that we've connected, and that we've said something that is helpful. And that's important. That's important to me. Those little small baby steps that I believe.
And as you said, you may shift one person, and that person may be the person who upsets the ship, that does the heavy lifting. You never know when that person is going to come along, almost like the next Buddha or the next Dalai Lama, where they're looking for them, and you never know who you're gonna motivate, because the new generation, like even Max Planck said that about trying to convince people. And Max Planck was the godfather of quantum physics, and he said you don't change your opponent by convincing him he's wrong. You science advances when they die, and the new generation is not offended with the idea. And I came up with this idea: science advances one funeral at a time. That the young generation, if you ask them now, Area 51, yeah, I know what that is. Skinwalker Ranch, yeah, I know what that is. Numerology, yeah, I know what that is, and they didn't know it all. I mean, it's a different world than 50, 60 years ago, or even 200 years ago, we were still burning witches. I mean, this kind of thing, we've moved a long way where the young generation is into Star Wars and this sort of thing. And that's the generation that's going to move this thing over the finish line, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I call that and I've mentioned it in my first book, and I'm going more into detail of this. It's called the Savior consciousness, this Savior generation. We have the millennials, we have the Gen Z, the Generation X, the baby boomers, but this next consciousness that's coming in, think about this. The kids are being born today and what they're about to go into, they're going to be the ones that
Yeah.
save the planet. So in my book, I identify them as the Savior consciousness. And I actually, as I said earlier, I really hope there's young people listening to this podcast today, because I do believe in my heart, from what I've seen, traveling around all my book lectures, you are the guys that are showing up. You're the ones who are getting it. You're the ones that are making the change, and you're the ones who are going to become, the leaders of this planet. So we've done our part. We will continue to do our part, but I applaud you for what you're about to do.
Yeah, even the one example is the autistic children, and people will have this big debate about, whether it's vaccines or it's like, who cares how they came? But there's the huge numbers of these autistic nonverbal children who are now being tested at Stanford, Harvard, University of Virginia. They're 100% telepathic, 100%. And then when they talk to them, I talked to one scientist who discovered it, and I said, this idea, did they tell you we came here to help you? They say we don't want you to cure autism. We're proud to be autistic or whatever. They can't speak, or they just touch on touchpads and stuff like that. And nobody even knew they were in there. And then suddenly they realize these kids are 100% telepathic. So on Christmas Day, the telepathy tapes, I don't know if you've listened to the telepathy tapes. The telepathy tapes was the #1 podcast in the world on Christmas Day, 1.5 million hits. And you see these little kids who are coming in who are 100% telepathic, who can read their mother's mind, who can speak in foreign languages. The one I just did. I asked her about her daughter, and she said her daughter was writing. She had to go and look it up. Her daughter was writing in Russian, and her daughter's 14 and doesn't speak or whatever. And you see this kind of paranormal stuff happening, and everybody, all the producers are trying to get a hold of this documentary, get these kids on tape and stuff like this. And this is just like mind-boggling, these kids, and this is the new generation, and you see them coming in, and you think that they're these hopeless kids, and they say, no, we're here to help you. And a number of them have said that, we're here to help you.
Yeah.
Move this consciousness.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? It's not the five senses. It's beyond.
There's more than the five senses. Yeah.
Right. It's multisensory.
Yeah.
Yes.
And these kids are just doing mind-boggling stuff, which shatters. It's like when you see it on, on camera, you go like, first you think, well, they're faking it or whatever, but then you realize, all these little kids aren't going to be running a big giant scam, and now they're being investigated at university where nobody would touch them before. Nobody would ever look at them, but it's just so dramatic what they do that would prove to you that the world is not the way you think it is, and that's what you and I and Cindy are doing. Is we're telling people the world is not the way you think it is. There's other parts of this thing, and there are people like you, say, Peter, who have come in who have a knowing. They picked up material that they knew was right. It's come out of the field, and to me, that's the most important information there is, to listen to people like you who've had these near-death experiences and have been given higher beings that are telling you how to actually operate and what's actually going on.
Yeah, I mean, and to your audience, just keep it simple. Be at peace, be happy, be grateful, help. That's what I learned on the other side. We live in a very complex world. We really do. But the laws of God, the teachings of Jesus, the Christman, the Buddha, the Native American Indian, the Dalai Lama, it's all very simple. We're here, as I said, to help. We're here to share information.
Yeah.
We're here to be good tenants of the planet. All those basic things, love, kindness, and to help. That's what we're here to do. And if we're not doing that, then we're kind of off. So, as I said, so it's just a simple, for me at least, it's a simple path. Just show up and just do it. And it takes but a second to be kind.
Yeah. What's your plan for the future as we sort of shut down here and close? What are you planning in the next little while?
Boy, that's a loaded question. I had a funny feeling when asked me that. I wanted to have an intelligent answer, and here I am, blundering. My concern, um, and just being honest, so it may not be the right answer. Um, I feel that someone very powerful is about to step in onto the horizon. I don't know who it is. This is what I'm guessing. It's what I refer to. We've had the Christ consciousness. We've had the feminine consciousness. We've had the Buddha consciousness, the Native American consciousness. And this is going to sound very strange. I don't know where it's coming from, but it was shared with me years ago by a woman who was a psychic for only those people who saw the 11/11. It's what she shared with me. It's called the Peter consciousness. And the Peter consciousness, she went back to Peter, the disciple of Christ, and he denied.
Yeah.
Of course, he became, the rock of the church. So her point being is that I think we've denied so much information. We've denied, our governments have denied information. I think we're past that denial, and the Peter consciousness are those leaders that are about to step up. And they are what I refer to as the resurrection energy. We go back to the scientists who written a book, but, where's the hands-on experience, the person who's been in the field? Those are the people we want to talk to. And why I say that, because the Peter consciousness is an authentic consciousness. These are the people who've been in the fields. These are the people who are doing the work. These are the people that what I call the unsung heroes of the planet that no one knows about. Think about these people in Gaza that are helping children. I go to Ukraine and look at those people that are rescuing animals that no one even knows their name. That's the Peter consciousness. So in my world of that, that's what I feel is coming, whether this man is named Peter. It was so funny when we lost our Pope, we have a new Pope, and the possibility of the new Pope coming in, his name was Peter. I thought, is it this guy? That's where my mind went. So I don't know who it is, but I just feel it's a part of that Peter consciousness and the denial, the resurrection energy, and then to be the speaker of truth. That's what I feel is coming. So whoever that resonates with, maybe I'm the only one who believes that. Maybe this Aunt Clara that I met in Seattle, maybe she's off. I don't know, but it made sense to me at the time. And maybe I'm not the great messenger of her information, of her message, but that's what I learned. Wow. So it's food for thought.
Wow. Cindy, do you have anything to add here?
So I do want to, so what I did is I got this, let me see if I can find it. Well, I want to share this.
Hold on.
It's
talk. You
how
got
to make sure you. What is it? Bring it up again. How to make sure what?
How to make sure you never get reincarnated on planet Earth ever again. Please, I cannot do this again. Oh my fucking God. I love sharing this with friends. This is really funny. But what I wanted to share is I got this off of Peter's website or Facebook post. And whenever I see these numbers, because I can't remember all of them, I'm scrolling through my photos and trying to find this. So what I did is I typed it up.
Oh, there you go.
And I pass it around to friends, or I just, give it to people just as a gift. Here, have this. And then on the back, this is what I said. I came across Signs and Synchronicity from the clock from Peter Anthony in August of 2023. Peter had a near-death experience. When Peter was sent back, he became very psychic. He gives reading and specializes in numbers in astrology. I had a reading by Peter in August of 2023. To learn more about Peter Anthony's near-death experience, Google the near-death experience of Peter Anthony. It's produced by Anthony Shin Production. It has 1.1 million views, 38 minutes, 42 seconds long. Initially, I kept seeing 11, 11, 1, 11, 555, 222 in 2023. Then there was a time I would see 444, 333. Most recently, I saw, this is last year in August, I think. I saw 1, 2, 3, 4. And it came at it. For me to see that number at that time last year was profound. Anyways, so for example, I'll just quickly read through. 1111, make a wish, pay attention to your thoughts and think positively. The universe is working with you to bringing all your most precious wishes to life. 1212, get ready to release all negativity. The universe is helping to clear out all that no longer serves you in your life. 1234, 1234, things are aligning. Keep moving forward and do the work. The universe is telling you not to give up. 111, you are awakening into a new awareness. The angels are guiding you on your path. Trust in the invisible force around you. Now, remember, I said I saw 111 right when we started. So this 111 is very meaningful currently for me with my journey. 222, what I just saw with us meeting. I mean, you talk about synchronicity, pay attention to important relationships, partnership are playing a key role in your life right now. 333, you are safe, protected. Let go of your fears of following your dreams and start pursuing your passion. 444, the angels are around you. It's a sign your dreams are being manifested. 555, change is coming. There's about to be a major shift in your life. So stay grounded and present. So the last time I saw 555 was February, and it was the morning. I mean, again, it's really profound. You have to pay attention, and you don't just say, it's by chance. No, nothing is by chance. I woke up that morning, and it's February, sometime in February. I don't remember the date, and it was the day that I'm supposed to fly to Utah from Portland to go look at real estate. And I woke up, I looked at my phone, 555. I mean, it was freaking amazing. Change is coming. There's about to be a major shift in your life. So stay grounded and present. So what does that mean? I'm moving to Utah in September. I'm going to be permanently residing in Utah because my kids are in Utah, and that's why I want to be in Utah. So, the universe speaks to you in numbers, in synchronicity, and fleeting feelings. Again, I say fleeting because it really is as light as a feather. And if you don't pay attention, it disappears.
I have to share something with you, and exactly what you just said.
Okay.
So I was on my way, I can't remember where it was. I had a friend of mine, his car was in the shop, so it was his ride for the afternoon to take him somewhere. I can't remember exactly where we were going. So on Avenue Caballeros going north, and I kept saying to my friend, I said, I keep seeing 1111, 222, 333, and he goes, I don't believe in that stuff, and you're crazy, blah, 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 right? All right. So I stop at the stop sign, and there's this cab with 444, it's Palm Springs, trying to call 444, and I'm looking, I said, oh my God, I said, look, there it is, and he dropped his phone, and he went to grab it, and then I looked at my digital clock in my car, and it was 333. So here it was, the cab 444, 333 my clock, and he reached to get his phone, and by the time he got up, it was 334, and the cab was gone. So my point being is not everyone is seeing this. So if you're seeing this number, it is specifically for you and your consciousness.
Yeah.
I could go down and think about this, what I'm about to say. There is a number in numerology called 144,000, 144000.
Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah.
That is, according to consciousness, the rotating number that when a soul leaves, that soul was replaced. There's always a conscious of 144,000 people on the planet. That's about the size of Rhode Island to shift consciousness. That's it. One soul leaves, another soul comes in. The shift of consciousness. So if you add that straight across, it's 9.
9. Yeah.
9 is the number of humanity. So I started saying 999. To me, 999 is your work, your passion. That's why your contract, the Akashic record, your soul commitment to this planet. And the 000, whenever I see that, and get ready, you'll start seeing it, you're being called by the divine, by God, by source, by the divine. There is a message for you, and it will come to you via song, via a billboard, via a conversation. And that's pretty powerful. That one in itself is the one that blew me away, the 000. So now that we've discussed these numbers, and again, I was seeing all these numbers on the other side when I crossed over, going back to that period of going back into that period of my life, there were no books on that. So I basically started numerology. And then I remember it was Dusty Bunker in the 90s that introduced what we call the karmic numbers. Karmic numbers are 13, you know. You think of the 13 as ruled by the Troll, which is the devil card. You think of the 67, which is the falling tower. Those are considered karmic numbers. Then you have the master numbers, 11, 22, 33, 44, 26, which is the Christ consciousness, which is the highest master number in numerology. So when I began to study these numbers and I went out and started volunteering my time as a reader to our television film industry, I was charging $25 for cast directors and producers and all these, you know, very famous people who come to me for readings. I was like, oh, wow, they don't want to pay me $25. And they kept sending their friends. And then I said, well, you know, I do this for free. I remember I was just living in this lack consciousness because here all these brilliant people were coming to see me. And then they said, you know what? No. So he gave me a lot more money than I at the time. I thought, oh, thank you so much. But I thought, you know what? You deserve this. You put your time and energy and you studied these numbers. And I just began to charge what I thought was appropriate at the time. And so I think there's this thing called the lack of consciousness, or the lack of consciousness, meaning we feel that we don't deserve, so therefore we bring in that lack of consciousness. And I began to realize that, you know, I deserve better than this. I deserve a great relationship. I deserve a powerful career. I deserve clients all around the planet. I literally would just do that, and it just started randomly come to me. But then the more and more I studied these numbers, the more and more I saw them, the more and more confirmed, the more and more I traveled sharing these messages. And I go back to what I said, to go to all around the United States and have these young people showing up, seeing these numbers, anxious to hear why. And they were also eager. And it wasn't about, you know, what about my career, or what about college when I get out? It wasn't none about that. It was the same conscious. What can I do to serve? How can I help? All these young people were seeing these codes. What can I do? And then it dawned on me when I went to Denver, and I just said this, you know, randomly. I thought, oh my God, you are the guys who are going into schools where there are mass shootings. You are coming into a planet where our environment is quite messy. You know, our politics are just vicious.
Yeah.
Think about what we have taken for granted, you and I, for so many years, and what they're stepping into. Yeah. So you have to give them credit for what they are about to do and change. They're getting their lessons early. So as I said, so I bow to them. I say thank you for about what you're about to do. I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
And we are more than just nothing but the slippers that get them to where they're going.
You got it.
Yeah. So for our audience, if you are wanting the angel numbers, you can message me on Messenger, and then I can send it. I can forward it on to people who want to have a copy of these angel number. I call it signs, synchronicity from the clock, from road signs, license plate, billboards, and numbers all over.
Okay. And Peter, where do people contact you if they want to get a reading or get your books?
Just go to my website, theaccidentalprophet.com. It talks about my books, the different blogs I've written. There's a lot there in my the different shows I've done, the podcasts I've done. There's a whole bevy of information on my website, my endorsement page. But reach out to me, the Accidental Prophet, and it sends directly to my email. And the other thing too, when you see this, if I don't respond right away, sometimes when I do these podcasts, I get inundated. Yeah. And for some reason, I get a lot of European clients that come to me. I was just amazed. I actually did a podcast in China, and one of my clients wrote me and said, "Oh my God, have you seen that podcast that you did in China? It's gone viral." And so I found it, and it was so funny because it was all written in Chinese, and there was my voice, and they did B-roll. and different images of me talking. But there was a part where it says translation, and you could click on that button and you could see what was written in Chinese, and I was blown away by the people that were seeing these numbers.
Yeah.
And so, as I said, so what we are seeing here on this planet, even though to us, I'm so amazed in all of these numbers, we're all seeing it for a reason, and we're all being awakened. And I think we should all be thrilled that we are part of that.
Thank you.
So I thank you.
Thank you
for all that you're doing. I thank you for giving me the space to come on and talk today and share what little bit I have. And I'm very grateful.
And
So
we'll watch your work.
Peter, could you slowly tell the audience your website and your email once more?
Oh, sure. Sorry, I talk fast. I'll give you my southern drawl. theaccidentalprofit.com.
Accidentalprofit.com.
Theaccidentalprofit.com.
Okay, perfect.
And as I said, just go to that, go to the contact page, and it shoots an email to me directly.
Oh, wonderful.
And, yeah, it's just easy because I have so many, my Gmail account, I still have AOL,